trying to get you folks to understand this is how the smoke and mirrors works. I just simply want to find out what happened to the American dream as someone who is living the American nightmare. You got to know the facts, and if we came together, we could overcome the corruption that's murdering us all.
I'm just trying to make the world aware of the truth, and I've got it.
Now look, one of our videos just blew the fuck up yesterday. I think we're like talking now 24,000 views in 24 hours, which is crazy. But at the same time, we've had a few of those in the past. I think back in the early days, we had some that were like north of 70,000 views, something like that. You know, but it's kind of like going to the casino, and sometimes you're playing roulette, or, you know, one of those, you're dropping nickels or quarters into the, you know, spin, and then every once in a while you hit, and then the next thing you know, there's gazillions of views and attention and likes and this and that. And then also a bunch of like whacked out comments, which in some ways I expect, but in others it's pretty surreal, because there's probably at least 30 hours of who I am and what I do on TikTok at hashtag Patrick Lovell, Truth Bombs the Con, and of course on I almost said YT, but YouTube at Patrick Lovell, Truth Bombs the Con. And I would love to see as much energy on YouTube so we could blast through some algorithms. Just please like and subscribe. And if you want to know who I am and what I'm about and what I'm talking about and what this is all about, you know, those are two great places to start. But the most important place to go to is a television series that I produced. I'm a muckraker journalist, okay? I'm an investigative journalist. I'm a producer. I went and I found the largest criminal conspiracy and cover-up in the history of the world, bar none, that never ended. Now, I know so many of you want to know who's behind the curtain. So many of you are into conspiracy. So many of you are like, well, it's got to be them, or it's got to be this, and it's got to work a certain way, and it's just... And yeah, it's 1,000 million trillion times bigger and fucking crazier than you could ever wrap your head around until you understand what I've done. By me, I mean my team and everybody who's been with me the whole time. But we've literally, I think, on the con itself, on our TV series, which is available at www.thecon.tv, I think we've been seen by a couple of million people. But to actually move the needle and to reveal what it is that I have to get through your minds, and then the minds of the outer rung and the outer rung and the outer rung, until we eventually get somewhere to 50 to 100 million people, is everything we lay out on the con. Because what is happening right now is the ultimate expression of everything that they covered up to make sure you don't understand. And let me tell you a couple of different ways that actually plays out. But I want to start by using kind of fictional references, because most of you understand movies. Most of you understand storylines, heroes and villains and that sort of thing, because we all understand pop culture. Now, I'm going to be quite a bit dated in some of the revelations that I lay on you, some of the analogies. But I think they're very worthwhile, and I'm sure many of you, especially now that TikTok is playing a lot of old stuff from my era that's suddenly streaming through on TikTok, that I think a lot of the younger generation are going to be like, wow, what was that? You know, I see Mike Tyson, for example, all the time and everything, and people discovered Mike Tyson in a profoundly huge way. And yeah, Mike Tyson is my era. Or a lot of guitars, magnificent musicians and rock stars like AC/DC or Stevie Ray Vaughan or Eddie Van Halen. So it's kind of cool to see this stuff get recycled for the younger ones that can see some of the talent that came before. Otherwise, we're just completely overwhelmed by so much information. It's hard to be able to see the forest for the trees. So who am I? Outside of everything that you can see and what I've just told you. In a fictional depiction, I'm pretty much Neo in the Matrix, and I'm fighting the Borg, and the Borg is corruption. And I've gotten to the point at this stage of the game, given everything that I've gone through and everything that we've gone through, which is literally a 13-year journey, an odyssey, that I'm seeing stuff in slow motion as it happens, and I know exactly where it's going and how people are going to react, and I know exactly what they're going to see. And so I keep grinding forward in this pursuit of justice that I call the righteous grind, that is going to spill out into Washington, D.C., on the 1st of November, 2022. I chose that date because 1 + 1 = 2. 11/1/22. 1 + 1 = 2. It's easy to understand because everything that I'm bringing to you is not rocket science, but it's racketeering. And most of us understand crime. In fact, most of us understand crime stories. In addition to being, what I just told you, an investigative journalist, what I really am is a detective. And by being a detective, you got to go find evidence of the crime. And what I found was the murder weapon that murdered the American dream. And I'm fucking pissed off about it. I'm so pissed off. I'm like Mike Tyson throwing an uppercut and all of those different sorts of little shorts that you've seen play out left and right and knocking dudes' heads off. That's how freaking pissed off I am about it. I'm legit. Nobody's paying for me to tell you this. This is all me. And the reason I'm doing it is because the entirety of our system, which is supposed to be liberty and justice for all, predicated on the integrity of law, has been completely betrayed by what I'm trying to tell you. So again, I'm Neo in the Matrix. I'm fighting the Borg, and the Borg is corruption. Another great, let's say cinematic metaphor would be I'm Indiana Jones in Raiders of the Lost Ark. And one of my favorite scenes in that movie was when Sala, Indy's right-hand guy, trying to figure out where the Ark of the Covenant was, finds out that the Nazis are digging in the wrong place. That's what all media has been doing. The fake media that Donald Trump plugged and got right, and the only thing he got right, because he's another character in a freaking Gotham Batman depiction, he's the Joker. But he understands how to run circles with corruption, particularly around, I would call them, I don't know, they're more like worms, the media, okay? They're always like circumnavigating their way around access to something that's going to hit, but then they ignore everything that matters. And one of the craziest things I've ever seen in my life is what I've been talking about this week, but it's exactly what I anticipated. So Donald Trump is being prosecuted in a 200-page indictment from the Attorney General of New York, in addition to the Southern District of Manhattan, in addition to the Department of Justice, based on documents that went to Mar-a-Lago. These are all separate cases. But the cases that are in the office of the AG in New York is all about what we call, well, what they're calling fraud. And yeah, it's fraud in a monumental way during normal times. But this type of fraud that the AG brought up, and what so many in media punditry are talking about, is these are the types of things that Trump had been involved with for literally decades. And so a lot of like the mainstream media, particularly, whether it's CNN or MSNBC or Fox, is just absolutely the dumbest, ignorant stuff I've ever seen on display in my life. They all are isolating this situation to Donald Trump. And Donald Trump is literally, as guilty as he is, a mid-level player in what this entire scheme is. I can't tell you how many times I've heard over the course of the last week, oh my God, why would a bank loan to a guy? Couldn't they just go out and do their diligence and underwriting and figure out that the apartment that Donald said was 30,000 square feet was 10,000 square feet, and have an appraiser that was working for the bank actually go and find out that the actual penthouse was worth, I don't know, maybe, like this is a small number, somewhere in the vicinity of, did they say 25 million? Versus 50 million. I mean, he really hyper inflated, his assets for a number of reasons. But the bare essence of the reason why he did that is in the fucking con. It's called control fraud. There's a methodology. And let me tell you, Donald is a small player in this madness. Now, beyond that, I was watching, for example, today, and it absolutely drives me nuts. Jon Stewart, smart guy, a really likable guy, a guy that has a huge audience, and he's been asking all the right questions for a long time. His latest, he's got this guy Berman, who was at the Southern District, SDNY, which is like the elite law office that combats both terrorism and elite, white collar fraud and all sorts of things. And the reason that why this guy Berman's been out on the circuit is because he wrote a book, because he's no longer working for SDNY. What he was revealing is corruption spearheaded by former AG under Trump, who I call the walrus, Bill Barr, who was involved with all sorts of like maneuverings to try to incentivize Berman to get off the case so that they could actually manipulate stuff that was happening in SDNY by the Department of Justice, which is corruption. And here we saw in this particular piece for Jon Stewart's show on Apple, whose name the name of the show, The Problem with Jon Stewart. And Jon Stewart's asking these questions as if it's isolated to, William Barr and quite frankly, Donald Trump. You see it over and over and over in mainstream media that it's got to be about all of these things that are being revealed about Trump. Meanwhile, they're all ignoring what I put into the con at www.thecon.tv. But here's what you got to understand. I didn't focus on one isolated event. I didn't put pieces of a puzzle together of the largest criminal conspiracy and cover-up in history that basically operated in some pizza parlor in Manhattan, for example, like something that we might see in an episode of, Law and Order, right? No. What I reveal is what happened to at least 50 million Americans, and I'd say maybe twice that, if not, 150 million people around the world got devastated by what is an extension of what the media is trying to frame Trump in right now. So imagine this is the universe they're looking in, and the reality of what I reveal is the entire story, which is the fucking the universe, okay? The universe of fucking fraud, pardon my language. And ultimately, Jon Stewart, once again, is on display where he shows that he has this capacity, this caring for regular Americans because justice isn't equal. And he's asking these questions to this guy Berman, who was his former neighbor, in the neighborhood, family, friends. And it was lovely to watch this. And I'm just thinking to myself, after watching Jon Stewart literally ask questions to Jamie Dimon, the CEO of Chase, the largest bank in the United States, who's also the largest white-collar criminal in the United States, and Jon Stewart and his freaking crack staff of comedians have no idea who they were dealing with. I mean, fill in the blanks of, again, Gotham. Imagine some, beat reporter up against the Joker and not knowing that the Joker's got complete control of Manhattan, fictionally. The absurdity and the stupidity and the ignorance is offensive to me because there was at least 100 million Americans who got buried by deceptive acts and practices in crime and fraud, which is not shenanigans. Fraud is criminal theft by deception, and it's felonies. And we've got literally tens of millions of felonies associated with what we reveal. And to be quite honest with you, all I've done so far is half of what the story really is. I've got hundreds of hours sitting on the fence because I can't get this to the American people because the Borg, going back to my analogy of me being Neo in the Matrix, has suffocated the ability to tell the truth in this society. Why? Because who I reveal are the guys that own the show. They're the ones who are the largest investors, the largest shareholders, the largest contributors to capital that all of these platforms in the tech space, in the digital space, all of the different studios are all dependent upon, as is all of industry writ large in the United States. Everything depends on debt. This is a calamity of monumental proportions, and you folks are asking me if I'm a plant. I'm a plant of the American people that went to go find the truth because nobody else would or could. Many of you think this whole thing's a fucking setup, that the government put me up to it. No. The government, if they really find me to be a threat, will silence me. They will find a way because what I've got is so extraordinarily huge that it dwarfs anything in the history of this country. And trust me, I understand the history of the North American Indians. I understand slavery. I understand all sorts of corruption, from Tammany Hall to everything that went down in San Francisco and Los Angeles, and all the stuff that created noir cinema, for example, in the 20s and 30s in the United States, and Chicago and New York, and all the rest. Listen, I'm telling you that this is the fucking thing that never ended, because we're that corrupt right now. And so, what is the machine behind the curtain that's pulling all the levers? Who is Oz? Who is the man in the shadows? Or the woman, or the whole situation? It's what I reveal to you. It's our financial system that's in your face every day, and they use the Federal Reserve, which is our central bank, which 99.9% of you do not understand what they do and how they do it and why they do it, so therefore you're in the dark. And you don't know what they've done and how it affects you. Well, let me put it to you this way. If the United States was designed to be separation of powers for a democracy where the rule of law is supreme, so that we could have a fair playing field, so that in a capitalistic sort of economic playing field, that the best rise to the top and you're rewarded by your own efforts, and that you have supply and demand, and that you can fulfill the American dream. That American dream does live in pockets, and it's, we could go find probably at our local hospital somebody who came up by their bootstraps and got their way all the way through school and got loans and got into a situation where they became a brain surgeon against all odds. I'm sure we could find many, many, many examples of things like that. Or a woman who came up in a situation where dad was an engineer and everybody said she couldn't do it, but she ended up being somebody at NASA. I mean, there's all sorts of scenarios like that. Or of course the next Michael Jordan, or of course the next LeBron James, or of course the next, fill in your favorite athlete. Those sorts of situations still exist. But in terms of the actual structure of where no man or company is above the law, that's absolute fucking nonsense. The corruption is insane. That supply and demand make sure that the winners in this country are the ones that actually earned it. That's fucking bullshit. Because corruption creates monopolies that enable this situation. And at the end of the line, it's not rocket science like I told you at the beginning. It's racketeering, which is crime, organized crime. We have laws to arrest bad actors who do this stuff, but unfortunately, they're not doing it because we're that corrupt. So, for example, going back to Jon Stewart, and I hope everybody blitzes Jon Stewart with this message, and I hope everybody blitzes, Tucker Carlson and Anderson Cooper and Rachel Maddow, because they're all freaking so in the dark. It's unbelievable, or they're just lying to us and cherry picking what they want to say and how they want to say it, because they got the message that you don't want to tell something this big. Something this big literally defiled every aspect of the institutions that are there to protect the integrity of the United States. They all failed. They all failed for a lot of reasons that have been going on for the last 2 decades, most of which are through revolving door and dark money that seized all of the institutions. So the Supreme Court is the ultimate effect of dark money. Congress answers to those who pay for their campaigns. The presidency, the same. So when current President Biden says this is a war between democracy and fascism, he's absolutely wrong. This is not a war. This is what the war is. Corruption births fascism. And the whole point is, there's a lot of people reacting to abortion on the ballot, right? Even though it's already gone, but yet there's like workarounds contextually that, maybe the executive office can, make legal, I guess, until the Supreme Court comes down on it. I don't know all the legal ramifications of what happened after the fact of Roe versus Wade, but yet that's what a lot of people are talking about. So frame it like this, okay? Corruption births fascism. That's a very real thing. So what I'm saying is abort complicity, abort stupidity, and if you abort corruption, then you freaking give birth to the actual integrity of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness based on the integrity of law. So yeah, let's look at it that way, right? In addition to everything else. And so for all of you out there that are trying to find out, oh my God, if we go to the Federal Reserve, it's going to be like the insurrection. There's going to be a setup. We're going to go to jail. They're going to shoot us. They're going to freaking all like sorts of paranoia beyond comprehension. We're getting permits. What we want to do is we want to pass around, a sign up where everybody says they're going to be there. We need to try to get 100,000 people to commit to being there. That would make sense. And the people that should be there primarily are the people that got devastated by the 2008 great financial crisis, because what we show in the con and what it's all about and what's created the world that we live in is that we, through the full faith and credit of the United States, backstop this insane criminal racket that's the largest criminal conspiracy in the history of the world illegally. Joker could never in a million years think this big. The amount of money and the amount of volume that I'm talking about is since 2009, we're north of $50 trillion to this system. There's 1,000 billion and a trillion. Donald Trump's total net worth, supposedly, is roughly $3 billion. That means that Wall Street got away with roughly 16,000 plus times more than what Donald Trump's net worth is, because you don't understand it. So what this means is that we've created a shadow king scenario. We call it oligarchies. It's a criminal apparatus. It's the financial system that is above the law because they make the law, and everybody in our democracy is in on it because they get paid by these guys to keep their mouth shut. And then media does their bidding, and they focus primarily on Donald Trump as public enemy number one. Oh, he's a bad guy, and he should be taken out. And I think he stole secrets to sell to our enemies. Not sure if it was for leverage or for profit or both. But he's definitely guilty of control fraud the whole time. And you got to ask yourself, why would somebody in the bank loan this guy millions upon millions, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars? In fact, Deutsche Bank loaned him $2 billion, from what I understand, when he was prone to creating extravagant, insane lies that it would take a freaking sixth grader and a yardstick a couple hours, probably a half hour, to figure out, hey, wait a second, he's saying that this apartment's 3 times the size of what it actually is. People, I have the truth. I am the only one willing to go the distance to get it to you. I need you who are patriots, who believe in liberty and justice for all, who want to purge corruption, to join me. We have to elevate the voices of millions above the noise of madness, because right now, the only thing of value in the United States are lies and deception in a monumental way that has never before been seen in my lifetime. Not even remotely. Most likely because technology just amplifies things infinitum. We're standing for truth and justice, just like Neo, or just like Indiana Jones, or just like the founding fathers and everybody who put their lives on the line during the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, the Great War, both World War I and World War II, particularly World War II, and then eventually civil rights. This country has borne patriots throughout its incredible 246-year history. I'm a patriot. What are you? I just made a promise to myself that I was going to find the answers.